our storytelling thing with us on the Church Away Day last year, who did the sort of storytelling idea, and I thought I could probably do a similar thing with this passage. So I imagined myself being in Aquila and Priscilla's home group, or the church as it would have been in Corinth. And I thought, well, who would I be in the church in Corinth if I wanted to connect with this story, with this idea of us having treasure in jars of clay? And I thought maybe I could be Josiah. That would be quite a nice sort of biblical name, wouldn't it, Josiah? Fancied being Josiah. And I thought, oh, if I was Josiah and I lived in Corinth, perhaps I could live on the outskirts of Corinth and have a little house on that wedge-shaped bit of wood on the outskirts of Corinth. And I might have a nickname, mightn't I? Josiah from the wedge-shaped bit of wood. Josiah Wedgewood, maybe. Who knows? There's a few more of those, so you'll have to look out for them. And I imagine myself living there and then being in, in a pottery in Corinth. And what would that be like? And working at my potter's wheel as a potter in Corinth. And I discovered that there were two sorts of potteries in Corinth. There was quite a smart, upmarket pottery. Sort of one end of Corinth, that's where I imagined it being. Anyway, I don't know whether it was there, but there was this quite smart, well-to-do pottery that made really, really nice vases, sort of containers for things, the sort of thing that you put your food in, or you put your valuables in, and it would have a little bung that went in the top. And I thought, well, that would be nice, wouldn't it, to be part of that particular pottery at one end of Corinth. But actually, the jars that Paul is talking about in this passage don't come from that pottery, they come from a different pottery. And I imagine myself sitting in Aquila and Priscilla's home as this letter from Paul is read to us about these jars of clay. And I could imagine Aquila saying to us, well, this is what Paul's telling us, we have this treasure in jars of clay. He knows he's writing it to us, so he knows that we've got these two potteries. He must be talking about these rather nice jars of clay at one end of Corinth, these posh vases that store things in. That must be what he had in mind. And I could imagine myself interrupting Aquila and saying, no, I don't think that's what Paul's talking about at all. I think Paul's talking about the other pottery, down the other end of Corinth. And explaining why. And the reason that I'd interrupt him in the group and say, no, I think he's talking about the other pottery, is that I work at the other pottery. So I thought about working at the fancy pottery at the other end. By the way, that's owned by a Mr. Lewis. His son John now runs it. And it's really nice, this pottery owned by John, the son of Lewis, at one end. But I work at the other pottery, which is slightly different sort of sector, different sort of market, really, down the other end. Was started by old man Wilco. And his son now runs it, Wilco's son. And they're down the other end. And I work there. And the reason I work there is because I like making things quickly and just getting them out the door, really. And what we make is not fancy sort of vases, but these sort of jar-type things, really. Our clays are not as good down this end of Corinth. It's not as fancy as the sort of the other end, the clay that Mr. Lewis uses, or his son now, running it, John, because they have really nice clay. We have pretty rough clay down our end, the sort of clay that I'm working with here, and we just make these jars, really, and they're thin, they crack when they dry, so not fancy at all, really. And so as I'm interrupting Aquila, I'm explaining this. I'm saying, look, I think you've got the wrong idea. Paul's not talking about the fancy Lewis vases. He's talking about my sort of pots of clay down the other end of Corinth. They're the ones he has in mind. They're thin and they crack, and they're this sort of shape. And they're this sort of shape because you pop a light inside them, and you drop a light in, and the light shines out. And the light can shine out because they're thin. They're rather fragile. The clay's not particularly good. It doesn't have much body to it. It's a bit, floppy. But the light shines through. So it's really good to let the light out, which is what Paul's saying in this story, really. He's saying, you've got this treasure. The treasure is the Holy Spirit living inside us. This light that we carry, that is the light of the kingdom of God that he's talking about in this letter. And it's got to shine out. There's no point in putting it in one of those fancy vases from, John the son of Lewis at the other end, because there's no way the light would get out. The pot's too strong. It's too solid, and they're painted and they're really nice, and the light would just stay inside. It would be like putting your light under a bushel. Just a waste of time. So your light's got to go in something that allows the light to shine out. So I think what Paul's saying, and I'm sort of explaining this in the group, and Aquila's sort of letting me do that, in a sort of, I'm not sure about this, but, we're into this sort of thing in our group. They like to encourage people to participate and, share what they think, and we wrestle with it together. Paul talks about it being sort of body life. He links it to, this idea that all of us are parts of Jesus' body and we all make our contribution. So I'm thinking, well, I'll make my contribution because I think this is what it means. So we're carrying this light, the light of the kingdom. And because of the cracks, you could say we're cracked pots. The light's able to shine out. It's able to get out. It's able to make a difference. Rather than if we had those rather fancy jars from the other end of Corinth, John the son of Lewis sort of jars, rather than our Wilco ones down our end. So these are fit for purpose, really. They're just what I think Paul had in mind. And who knows, maybe I can't remember whether he went to the potteries. He's quite likely to have done when he came to visit. And he's sending us these letters now, just following those visits up, and just using things that sort of are in part of our lives, really. So he'll recognise the fact that we know about these pots and these jars. And so it's important, I think, that we understand which ones he's talking about, so that we can get the full meaning of it. So there we are. So I think that's the sort of thing that Paul had in mind as he wrote to us. And he would have been thinking about the fact that this light, the Holy Spirit living in us, which John talks about, doesn't he? About Jesus coming, bringing light into the world, the darkness not overcoming it, but us carrying that light and letting it shine out of us, often in our weakness, often when we're not feeling particularly, fancy and la-di-da like those other pots, but in this very sort of raw state is often when the light shines best. So that's how I stepped into the story, and just imagine myself in the story and what it might be like to be thinking about these jars of clay. And I think there's lots of things that we can pick up on, that it's encouraging for us that Paul is talking about us being containers for the light, allowing that light, whatever it might have been. It might have been oil with a little wick in it, or like a little night light or candle or whatever, going into these jars to stop it blowing out, but the light being able to shine through because of the very fragile nature of the jar of clay that it was put in. So I thought it would be good for us to perhaps have a go, having a bit of clay, making something. We've got aprons, and I've got some extra tables out. We've got tablecloths. So be thinking about what you might like to make and how you might tell a story around that. If you want to gang up with 2 or 3 other people and make, one thing together that has several components to it, then do that. Enjoy yourselves. And there's something about working with your hands and making something that then enables you to tell a story that takes it out of your head, brings it to life a bit. So if you're thinking, I don't do this sort of thing, have a go. See what happens. You might be surprised Something might happen that you're not imagining would happen. Just have a play. It's quite fun stuff to use. If it gets on you, it comes off. It does brush off, doesn't stain, or it will wash out. So it's not a disaster. We've got some little aprons, so you're welcome to use those. But Jill, Richard, would you mind just taking the mic to Jill for a moment, switching it on? I'd just like to hear